Bass, get your fish on with the incomparable Ken Duke. Yee! I need one of
Good
those
evening.
cheer buttons where I hit the button and I get tons of clapping. We're not that sophisticated. Yeah.
Mr. Bass, there is no button that will get Ken Duke a lot of clapping. Trust me on that.
I clap every time you call me. Oh, yes, here he is.
Yeah.
I wish I got that reception. That would be cool. I'll one of these days I'll tell y'all sometimes when I've been booed.
Have you really been booed?
I've been booed by Steve Chapman.
Well, that was what did I boo? It was probably because of a story that you told.
No, it was
when
the
we beat you in
second
the
ICAST tournament.
Oh yeah. Oh well, the ICAST tournament that pissed me off. And I only booed as you passed by me, like going.
No, I did not. No, I did not. Mr. Bass, the true story is.
Go ahead.
Well, this is the second ICAST tournament, and I had a pretty good fishing partners that day. One of them was Cody Detweiler, who he and his dad ran Big Toho Marina. And Cody was as good a fisherman on the Kissimmee chain as anybody.
As anybody.
And the other guy was named Bill Dance, I think was his name.
Yep.
And Bill had asked me to fish the tournament with him the year before, and I couldn't because I had another commitment, and it hurt me. It caused me physical pain that I could not fish with Bill Dance because that's like a bucket list item, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the next year I made sure I didn't have any conflicts. And so I was lucky. Bill called again. Oh, by the way, the first year Bill Dance went out and won the tournament.
Yep.
And I wasn't his partner, and I was crushed. So the next year I made sure I didn't have any conflicts, and lo and behold, Bill calls again. I said, yes, Bill, I'm in. There's no way I'm going to say no to you ever again. I'm in. And so we're heading out a Big Toe Marina. You got to go past a seawall and stuff, and you're kind of idling slow. And because I live here, I know some people, including the inimitable, and in this case, inevitable Steve Chapman.
Right on.
And I'm screaming at him.
Suddenly, Steve realizes it's me in the boat with Cody Detweiler and Bill Dance. Then he points it out to other people, and pretty soon there's almost a chant of "Ken, you suck."
It wasn't fair to have Ken and Cody together to start off with, but then you put Daddy in the boat with him, and then and he's driving by, and I'm waiting at the boat ramp for Scott Martin, and I'm like, wait a minute,
Martin, who's that?
Yeah, and I'm going, I'm supposed to be on that boat. I was supposed to be with Cody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm like, how is Ken on that boat and I'm not? And then Ken comes back and goes, look, I played the media card. I told everybody I needed to be, but really it was Daddy that said,
Bill Dance asked me, and you know, I'm not going to say no to Bill Dance.
Uh-huh.
Last time I checked, he's Bill Dance.
He is Bill Dance. He is Daddy.
And I love Bill Dance. Bill Dance is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome human being.
He's a legend.
Oh, I see somebody has asked, who's Ken Duke? Good question. Heck of a question.
Yeah, who is that Ken Duke guy?
He's a guy whose face is as red as his shirt is the problem right now.
Hold on. I have one of Ken's book. Hold on. Oh.
The Big Bass Book.
No, Ken Duke is a guy who loves bass fishing.
Yeah, well, a little more than that.
I don't know. Just
how about
that.
The Bass
There's an old book.
Vault. So maybe we should just let you take a minute or two and kind of tell everybody about your illustrious career path because you're way more than just a guy who likes to bass fish. You've made a huge impact in the whole industry. And it looks like there may be a person or two, for some strange reason, have never heard of you.
Hey, do you know you didn't autograph this?
You didn't ask me.
You did too. We're supposed to the day I got it.
You didn't ask me.
Did you put it in the back?
It goes to show you that Steve's never looked at the book before.
Exactly. It's the first time Steve's opened the book. No, I gave you the book. I didn't want to devalue it by signing it. Anyway,
I can't believe that. Now I got it.
Is a guy who loves bass fishing. He decided early on that he wanted to do something around bass fishing. So in high school, whenever he got assigned to write something, he'd write about bass fishing. And then so I sold my first article to a national magazine when I was 18. And then when I was a young man, I made a horrible mistake that I'm embarrassed about. And I hesitate to tell you all about it here. I went to law school. And that was a dark time in my life. Then I practiced law for 10 years. More dark times. But then I recovered. I got better. And I got back full time in the outdoors world, writing, editing, stuff like that. I've written a couple of books on bass fishing. The one that Steve showed there, the Bass Fishing Vault. I wrote another one with the great Glenn Lau. I've worked for the Game and Fish magazines. I've worked for BASS. I was the senior editor of publications there for a long time. Thank you for that, Mr. Bass or Steve or whoever did that. I now am the editor of a magazine called Fishing Tackle Retailer, which is the industry's only business-to-business publication. And every once in a while, Mr. Bass and Steve ask me to be on the show, and that's what gets me recognized by anyone at all.
Let me, if I can just help here.
Yeah, help.
Ken is the most knowledgeable bass tournament fisherman knowledge person. I don't even know what you want to call it. I go so far as genius.
Walking encyclopedia.
That you'll ever meet. Here's an example. You're not looking at your... Shut the computer for me. No, don't shut the computer. Don't look at the computer. Who won the 2016 Classic?
2016 Classic? Are you serious? That's way too easy. That's Edwin Evers.
Okay. How about...
No, don't. That's we can go on. If we want to play bass trivia, I'm in. But we don't need to play bass trivia. Yeah, Edwin Evers won on Grand Lake, Oklahoma. At that point, he was the third angler in a row to win in his home state, behind Randy Howell in 14, Casey Ashley in 15, Edwin in 16. Edwin almost won the Red Crest on Grand Lake a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
So
he was the editor of Bass Magazine for how many years?
Oh, a while. I was senior editor of Bass Publications, so I was involved in Bassmaster, Bass Times, Bassmaster.com. It was a fun time to be there. I got to know a lot of guys in the bass fishing world. You know, the Kevin Van Dam and Skeet Reese and Edwin Evers and Aaron Martins and you name them. There's an excellent chance I have hung out with them, maybe had dinner with them, maybe fished with them, certainly written about them. Mm-hmm. It's been a nice career.
Yes.
I'm curious, of all your affiliations, do you have any pro anglers that are mad at you, don't like you?
Wow.
I did not ask you to say that question.
He just goes for the kill, doesn't he? That's not easy.
Listen, when you're in the press and you're writing stories about anglers, I know you've ruffled some feathers.
I have, but Mr. Bass, I'm going to ask you, look right over. Let's see if I can get pointed to it here. I need to go like this. You see, it should say guest. You don't have to guess. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you I'll always answer honestly. I swear to you, I'll always answer honestly. And yes, I have pissed off some bass pros and people through the years. I've been very fortunate and been very careful. I've never pissed them off because I misquoted them or misrepresented something they said or something like that. But I did have a tough relationship with one angler for more than a decade. And believe it or not, and Steve may know this, but believe it or not, I decided I wanted to kind of patch things up, make things right. And last year I apologized to that angler. Not that I thought it was entirely my fault, but I thought enough of it was my fault that he deserved an apology. And so I apologized to that guy last year.
I know who it is.
Do you need a name?
No. You don't have to say his name.
You don't have to reveal anything you don't want to reveal, for sure.
If anybody in the messages here wants to guess a name, I'll confirm if you hit it right.
Someone's gonna text me. You know that. I mean, it is. I mean, there's anglers that don't like me. A lot of them.
Heck yeah.
Do any like you? Are any of them fans of yours?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's one we both know very well, and I don't have any problem with saying. You know, he and I don't see same eye to eye.
Booster asks, is he from Texas? And Booster, he is not. No, I get it, and I've had my issues with the guy you're talking about, Steve, and I can't say I'm a big fan or anything like that.
It is what it is.
But he and I have not bumped heads so much in a situation where there was like some rough patches, like with
and knowing what I know now, I think that happens with a lot of the people that are in the media. He seems to just rub people the wrong way a lot of times.
The guy you're talking about does rub people the wrong way, but I want to say this too, because this is fair, Mr. Bass. I have guys who may not like me, but they're nice to me because I'm media, and they feel like it's just bad business.
Yeah,
to be mean to me.
I'd say it is. It's bad business to. I mean, here's the thing that everybody should understand is when you are working in a professional sport of any kind, where your sponsors rely on the fans, there's always going to be a media component, and you've always got the spotlight on you regardless. And that is part of the business. And if you don't like dealing with the media, then you probably shouldn't be in this business.
Right. A lot of guys think, oh, I'm going to fish for a living, and that there are no other components to it other than picking up a rod and reel and fishing. And I don't know anybody who doesn't work on like a shrimp boat or something that truly fishes for a living. The guys you see in the tournament jerseys and you read about on Bassmaster.com, MLF, those guys don't fish for a living. Fishing is a part of what they do, but realistically, it's probably no more than about 50% of what they do. Ray Pod, it is not Rick Clunn. I love Rick Clunn. Rick and I have always gotten along great. I'm so proud to call him a friend. So it's not Rick Clunn.
Rick is not the easiest person to interview, but when you do finally get through to him, when he does start talking to you and he does know who you are, he's really a good person.
I think he's the best interview in the sport. I really do. He's the best interview in the sport. He's going to give you an answer that you didn't anticipate and that is going to make you think.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be on what you think is the most nothing question. Like I'll ask him, we'll be talking about a square bill technique or something like that, and I'll say, what do you think? What does the average angler do wrong when he's throwing a square bill? And Rick said to me one time, he said, well, if he's having fun, he's not doing anything wrong.
That's pretty clever.
What an answer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the messages too. Is he still fishing? Asks Booster. Yes, he is still fishing professionally.
Yeah.
He's a big Ray says, I already forgot the Bass Pro that I don't like.
I know who it is, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Let's see. Was there tension between Rick Clunn and Roland Martin? Asks Ray Pod. Well, I think there was some professional tension, especially back around 1990, 91, maybe the late 80s, because Roland had won 9 Angler of the Year titles and Rick had won, depending on what point in that range you put it, between 3 and 4 Bassmaster Classics, because Rick won the Classic in 76, 77, 84, and 90. And there was a battle because there were all kinds of people who would divide who they thought was the greatest based upon whether they'd won a lot of Angler of the Years or whether they had won a lot of classics. So I think there was a lot of professional tension, but I've never seen or noticed that there was any personal tension between those guys.
Do you think Roland Martin is, because we're going to do a whole thing on the best angler, professional tournament angler. Do you think Roland Martin's top 3?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. I think Roland Martin is, I think the top 3 are in no particular order here. I'll go alphabetical order. How about that? The top 3 all time are Rick Clunn, Roland Martin, and Kevin Van Dam. And anybody who wants to argue with me that anybody else cracks the top 3, you're going to have a tough battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody guessed Mark Zona. Mark Zona does not fish professionally.
Mark Zona is a good dude. Have you ever had a problem with Zona? We've never really talked about Zona.
I've never had a problem with him.
No, he's always been really good. He's actually really a nice guy. I will say, after he's done doing his broadcast during the Classic, he doesn't want to talk to anybody after that thing. He just wants to go straight back to the hotel, so you don't ever bother him. But exclude that, he is fantastic.
Tommy Biffle. No, it's not Tommy. I get along great with Tommy Biffle. He's a cool guy. What a talent with his hard head and biffle bug, pitching, flipping. He's a really interesting guy. He's a lot of fun. I did my Tommy Biffle imitation a few times this week because we were fishing at a cool place in Louisiana. And every time I'd get into an area I wanted to fish, there was another boat there. I'd say, "I didn't see you here in practice."
Did you say I'll cut you?
I'll cut you. I'll cut you. Which is the ultimate Tommy Biffle imitation here. Booster agrees on my top 3. Thank you, sir. How about Ike? No, I love Ike. Ike and I are good friends. Let's see. Tom Mix says Ike loves Ken Duke. Well, I hope so, because I love Mike Iaconelli. Great guy.
Hold up, but good guy.
He can be, and of course can't be Dance. Oh my God, I love Bill Dance.
Won't ever be
Mike Iaconelli. People may not realize the guy you see going nuts and crazy like that. That's Mike Iaconelli. That's who he is a lot of the time. But he has another gear also, and he's very personable. Before I met Mike, and I just heard a lot of stuff about him, I wondered how I would like Mike Iaconelli. But covering tournaments and seeing how he deals with fans made me a fan. Even before I was a friend of Mike's, I was a fan because he was there signing the very last autograph.
Mm-hmm.
If a little 4-year-old kid comes up, he drops down to his knees and he gets eye to eye with that kid. And Mike, like few other people, can zone out from the rest of the world and make whoever he's talking to feel like the center of the universe. Mike's a great guy, but he doesn't rub everybody right. I get it. He's not the universal flavor that everybody loves, but I really like Mike Iaconelli. Zell Roland, Ray Pod asked Zell Roland. No, Zell Roland stayed at my home many, many times.
Yeah, that's his boy.
He's Zell is a great guy. So
okay, we have to start. We need to talk about where the topic is.
I spent 2 days with Scott Canterbury. A good guy. I like him.
All right.
I'm sorry. Worst bait ever made. I have an answer for that. I should hold on.
You got it?
Worst lure ever made. Here it is. The hover lure.
Nice. It says King of Bass on it.
Well, yeah. Apparently you can put anything on a box, Mr. Bass.
Yeah. You can.
Put whatever you want on there.
What's that?
You can put whatever you want on there.
Yeah, that's right. That's the biggest piece of junk ever, and I'm proud to have one. They're hard to find.
They are.
Right. So this will be fun. We can have people continue to guess until somebody nails it here. There's a lot of guesses going on.
Hold on. I got to send you a text. Hold on.
Okay.
Don't read it out loud.
Mark Jeffries is a wonderful friend of mine. Inventor and long time host of Bass Talk Live. Mark's a great guy. I talked to Mark last week. He's enjoying retirement. Somebody said
Mark Menendez.
Paired. No, I love Menendez, but I like to tease Menendez. Bill Hall. Bill, you named the guy. I don't know if you were guessing the guy or not.
But, yeah,
but you named the guy.
You did name him. He did. That's what I just texted.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if Bill, the way Bill said it, it wasn't like a guess. It was like I'm just rolling this name out.
So, are you allowed to tell this? Can we talk about it now and tell the story about behind it, or do we not want to do that?
Let's
not. I don't want to get you in trouble again, because heaven forbid we get it. I don't want you to get those emails.
I'll give out my email address right now.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
I don't mind.
It was Gerald.
Yeah, it was Gerald. Gerald and I had a rough patch, but you know what? He was always very professional about it face to face. I tried to be very professional about it face to face. Let's just say he did something that kind of bugged me one time, and I did something I shouldn't have done. I wrote an article I shouldn't have written. I like Gerald. I think Gerald is hilariously funny. And I think Gerald is really good for the sport.
Yeah.
And there are guys I'm not crazy about who I don't think are good for the sport, who I never actually had a run-in with. I get along with fine. Part of my job being in the media, I've kind of got to get along with everybody. If I need to get a story and there's a guy I can't call because I know he won't answer the phone or talk to me, that's a problem for me. I don't like that. I can't have that situation.
It's cool that you apologize and you guys made up and everything. That's cool. I don't know if I'm going to apologize to our person, but
no, I don't think you need to. I think that Gerald is an amazing fisherman.
Yeah.
He's got a tremendous reputation as a junk fisherman, and it of course is absolutely deserved. The guy is a master at putting 13 rods on the deck, moving down through an area and fishing everything in front of him with just the right technique and just the right piece of equipment. There is nothing he can't break down and be effective with. And, and somebody said up here, let's see, Fishing the Southeast said G-Man is due a win. I agree. But, for almost every angler out there, every pro angler out there, the circumstances have to be just right to win. And for Gerald to win, I think he needs a tough tournament where nobody's on a strong pattern and it's paying to work an area and to be very versatile about it. And it's going to take a wide variety of approaches. When that happens, I think Gerald is a threat. And Gerald is always a threat to do well because he can do so many things.
Yeah, he's definitely proven he can be consistent. I mean, he's won Angler of the Year
twice. Yeah. And he's I would love to spend time in the boat with Gerald, especially fishing a buzzbait. He's a master.
Okay, we need to get to our topic.
We have a topic?
That wasn't our topic?
It wasn't
rules in a knife fight?
What did it say?
Rules in a knife fight.
Yeah.
That's a line from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
So one of the things that I've noticed is that I thought it'd be fun to talk about some of these guys that have moved back from Major League Fishing back to the elites and really look at should more Major League Fishing anglers do it, because they seem to do really well when they go back. That's kind of not the way I had put it, but maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe that's what we ought to talk about first, Steve, is who are the guys that left the elites, went to Major League Fishing, Bass Pro Tour, now they're back on the elites. Who are those guys, and how are they doing now that they're back?
They seem to be doing really well.
Well, Mike Iaconelli is really struggling this year.
Yeah.
Really struggling this year.
That is true.
He's put himself so far back that he's going to have to really turn it on just to make the classic. And Mike doesn't miss classics.
I don't see Iaconelli making the classic.
More than half the season is left. But, obviously we're talking about guys like Iaconelli. We're talking about Palaniuk, Hackney, Swindle. Who am I missing?
Christie, Austin Felix.
Jason Christie. It's interesting that this is the topic, because I was having just this conversation with some of the MLF guys recently. I mean, I'm talking about with Gary Klein and Boyd Duckett, in fact, and because of the way MLF set up their system and signed up anglers with a 3-year initial commitment, it just so happened that the only way the flow could go was from MLF to BASS. That was the only way the flow could go, because of that 3-year commitment. Nobody could go from Bass to MLF. At some point, MLF could easily, if they wanted to, set up a format whereby they can invite anybody they want. They don't have to qualify from the Tackle Warehouse series or something. They could just invite people over from BASS. And I think that may well happen. And as a power move, just as a move to show that that this directional flow doesn't have to stay consistent, I think it would be a very interesting play if MLF went out and offered a top bass pro a lot of money to come over and play in the every fish counts world.
Have you got a top bass pro in mind?
I do have a bass pro in mind, but I don't want to say. I don't want to say. I would say in my opinion, this guy is the best angler in the Elite Series. And if I were MLF, if I had the checkbook at MLF, I would offer this guy a lot of money to come over and play our game.
Interesting.
I would love to know who you think is the best on the Elites. Who are your top? Don't say the person, but who are your top 10? Like, would it be a past MLF person? So would you take out Cox? Chris?
If you're asking top 10, half of them are former
MLF
people who went to MLF and then came back.
Yeah.
Half of them. But I think one of the things I think is kind of underplayed in these conversations like this. And Hank's No Outdoors, JC is not his initials, despite the fact that obviously that guy's killing it this year.
Killing it.
For sure.
And Fishing with Gramps, Woodford Reserve. I guess, he must be seeing my bottle back there or something. Or no, it's not back there right now. Something must have happened to it.
You guys are in
but one thing that people are not talking about, I think the way we should be talking about, is a lot of those guys left MLF partly because they weren't good in that format. That wasn't a format that served them well.
Mm-hmm.
When the 68 guys originally left Bass for MLF, I thought to myself, the guys who made a living with a flipping stick in their hand just made a bad decision. The guys who Bass, because they're not numbers guys.
Yeah.
And then I thought, the guys who Bass would have made a poster boy out of, like Brandon Palaniuk, just made a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
For example,
Hackney,
Palaniuk, Jordan Lee, Justin Lucas. Those guys had it made at Bass.
Mm-hmm.
Had it made. But they all left. Now Palaniuk's come back, but the other guys left. And I felt like that was maybe I wondered if it was a mistake. Now, since then, Justin Lucas has won some events. Since then, Jordan Lee has won some events. So obviously those guys can compete anywhere. But I thought business-wise, maybe that was going to be a tough one.
Palaniuk, I think after the first tournament on Toho, when they had they had Johnny Morris and everybody out there for the first day. I remember that they went out and Brandon came in and they were lined up in a perfect way to do interviews. I went through all of them and Brandon was at the end. And I got to Brandon and I said, "So," and he goes, "I'm giving this 1 year." And he goes, and I said, "Well, hold on, let me delete that off my camera because I don't want to use that." But that was the first thing he said to me. "I'm giving this 1 year." And in this topic, here's where where I thought about this is that so we know of there's 6 or 7 guys that left. We got Palaniuk, Hackney, Christie, Felix, Swindle, and Justin Atkins and Iconelli. So there's 7 guys that have come back.
Oh my gosh, we talked about Mike and then we didn't list, or maybe we did list him when we came up. Yeah, a number of guys have come back, and because of the commitment MLF made, the 3-year commitment, nobody's gone the other way.
Yeah, and they've made, out of 23 tournaments, there's been 6 of those guys have won 6 out of 23, which isn't a huge number, maybe 25%. But there's only, technically you can't include Iconelli in this, but there's been 5 or 6 guys who have won 25% of the tournaments.
Yeah, well, look at it this way. After these guys have come back, and these guys have not fished an equal number of tournaments. You're talking about 3 years of data, and really these guys have only been back for 1 or 2. So what you're really saying, Steve, is that 5% of the guys have just won 25% of the tournaments.
Yeah.
Well, I would say a couple of things about that. One is when those 68 guys left Bass, they were awfully good. They were the best fishermen on the planet. Did a few of the best fishermen not leave Bass? Yeah, but it wasn't the highest echelon group in terms of performance. Yeah, it was the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
I think that the anglers of the year that Bass has had over the last 3 years would have won angler of the year had those 68 guys stayed? I do not. Do I think that the same guys would have won the tournaments, except in a couple of cases? I do not. Lee Livesey would have won at Fork, and Patrick Walters would have won. But otherwise, how can I say that they'd have beaten Van Dam and Martins and Evers and Reese and Faircloth and all these other guys and Rojas and Monroe? Yeah. Do I really think they would have sliced through all those other guys and won the tournament? No. Do I think Paul Mueller would have won twice? I do not.
Yeah.
I do not. The quality, the caliber of fishing on the Elite Series is not as good as it was a few years ago. And anybody who tells me it is probably wearing a BASS shirt.
And we're not taking anything away from those anglers.
You know what?
We're not taking anything away from those anglers.
No, a lot of them are. Hey, Patrick Walters is a spectacular talent. Justin Hamner is terrific. Canterbury, Wendlandt, Kiter, those guys can catch them.
Steve and I have both.
Martin's a talent. What's that?
Steve and I have both had the same conversation multiple times offline, and we totally agree with you. I mean, there's hands down, you're absolutely right. I would think we would concur on that point. What kind of surprises me is knowing that and knowing the fact that really, the very best anglers as a body still are really over at the Bass Pro Tour.
Can I comment on that, Mr. Bass?
Yeah, sure.
The very best anglers at the 5-fish limit format are over there. I'm curious as to whether it's the very best anglers at the every fish counts format.
Yeah, now that's a very interesting comment.
That's even better. Yeah.
That is very interesting. Yeah, what I was going to add though is it is interesting to me that in this 3-year period where the competition over on the elite side has been, not as stellar as it was, I am very surprised at how well Bass has done. It has thrived. It has an incredible 3-year run. I remember, when you're talking about these 68 guys that jumped, there was definitely some of those guys that should not have jumped. But at the time, if I were to put myself in their shoes, I think I would have been scared to death to stay at Bass. There was so much talk that Bass isn't going to survive this. If you're one of these unlucky guys that did not get the invite, you may not be fishing professionally in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so
there with you. And and one of the underrated things that also doesn't get discussed, unfortunately, is one of the big reasons. I think the general bass fishing fan who doesn't take the deep dive into the thinking of some of the pros or the business of it all is missing one of the big things about why these guys left Bass. They didn't trust Bass.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't trust anything Bass said because Bass had lied to them too many times.
Mm-hmm.
And misrepresented itself and said they were going to do this and then didn't. And a lot of that was a guy named Jerry McInnes. But a lot of that is just a historical problem at Bass, including and definitely while I was there, it was a problem. And that was very unfortunate. So even when Bass came back to these guys who were going to be leaving or who were leaning toward leaving, these guys couldn't trust what Bass was saying in their efforts to get them back. So yeah, I'd have been afraid to leave too. By the same token, if we had known that Bass was going to hang in there as well as Bass has,
yeah,
I think some guys would have been better served to stay because they went from, I've had it described as checkers to chess. I don't think that's a good analogy, but I would say they went from 8-ball to snooker. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Or they went from Texas Hold'em to Raz, or whatever game analogy you want to have, but they definitely changed games.
One thing I'm curious about that you maybe know, Steve maybe knows as well, I just haven't paid that close attention. One of the things that I heard a lot when these 68 guys made the jump, in fact, I can remember watching a lot of videos. Paul Elias's video comes to mind, but there were several others where they basically said, look, we're following the money. We're not making the kind of money at Bass that we need to make. And everything over on the Major League Fishing side seems to indicate we're not going to have to pay entry fees, and we're going to make much more money over here, and it's time for the anglers to get paid. So now that we're this far down the road, has that panned out? Are they really making much more money over there than they did on the elites?
Wow. Steve, why do you let Mr. Bass ask me a question? Why? What happened between us, Steve?
Yeah.
We were brothers.
Yeah. I guess I'm not smart enough to ask the politically correct questions.
No, you're asking amazing questions, Mr. Bass. They're just brutally hard, and they're good for a conversation over a bourbon in a small room,
but not on a podcast.
rather than a podcast with a lot of viewers, listeners. I'm gonna give you my best honest answer, and say that I don't think it's panned out. I think that the fact that there are no more no entry fee tournaments is a strong indicator that it hasn't panned out. I think that this turned out to be a much tougher nut to crack than MLF anticipated. When I went out, and I was out there with Steve when they kicked off the BPT at Toho, and there's Johnny Morris, and Stan Kroenke's behind it, and that there's Boyd Duckett, and there's Don Rux, and here are the brains and the great talents and the deep pockets of the sport. And standing there on the bank that day, I'm thinking, how can these guys lose?
Yeah.
How can these guys lose? Well, I think they found ways to put roadblocks out there. And I think that they may have underestimated the familiarity and the support of a 5 bass limit. I think maybe they put a little too much emphasis on every fish counts. And I think they've made it confusing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I cover the sport a long time, and I've followed the sport for almost my whole life. And I frequently don't understand how it works.
Yeah, even at the Red Crest, they had different rules than any other tournament. They moved it up to 3 pounds, and then it became a tough fishery.
They had it at 2 pounds, and my objection to the size limit thing, which they didn't really have the first year or so. My objection to the size limit thing is primarily that they keep moving it.
Yeah.
Based on the fishery.
It's 1.5 pounds at one place. It's 2 pounds at another place. It's 3 pounds here.
Yeah. let's pick a number, guys. Let's not change the value of a field goal just because the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be 4 points just because you're kicking into the wind this time.
Yeah.
You're a different leg. It doesn't need to be 3 pounds because you're at Fork and 3/4 of a pound because you're on the Ohio River. Let's pick a number. Let's go. But I love the MLF format. I've covered as many tournaments, I'll bet you, as anybody. And the tournament they had at Red Crest, which was also a terrific show. The attendance wasn't great, but the show was strong. That tournament that Bobby Lane won was the most exciting tournament I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that
last limit or no.
That last 5 or 6 minutes was pretty intense.
Yeah.
That was crazy. And that can only happen in the MLF format. And you know what? On the bass side of things, they had their closest classic in 25 years. 25 years since they've had a classic that close. And what I learned was not that it was exciting. What I learned was that they delay the drama. They delay the drama. They take it off the lake and they delay it 90 minutes or longer until Jason Christie puts his fish on the scales. And even then, what they do is they don't tell me that, oh, score tracker was a little bit off. They tell me that Jason Christie sandbagged enough that he won the tournament instead of Kyle Welcher.
Well,
that is not drama. That is manipulation.
Our last show was about the sandbagging. This was Steve's brainchild, a few weeks ago. It was like, these guys are sandbagging like crazy. I got to admit, though, they had me hook, line, and sinker. I really didn't think Christie was gonna win it. I was watching that whole day, and I really thought Kyle had it. And I thought it was pretty dang interesting to watch.
But even think about that though, Mr. Bass, because I'm sitting there in the media center at the Classic when that happened, and I'm watching. And I'm thinking Kyle Welcher won too, because we've seen what Jason Christie does on day 3 of the Classic and how he chokes it away.
Yeah.
But instead, when he throws his fish on there and they weigh more, I'm not thinking, oh my God, what an exciting finish to the Bassmaster Classic. I'm actually thinking, he had more. He probably knew he had more. And the real drama was hours ago, and we missed it. We missed it because he wasn't weighing these fish as they came aboard. Whereas Bobby Lane's fish are being weighed in real time, and Score Tracker is the official number. So that when Bobby Lane weighs that fish the 3rd time, which is the last time he could weigh it, and he weighs that fish the 3rd time and hits 2 pounds, my head explodes.
It was insane. It was the
coolest thing ever.
It was insane. Okay, but I don't want to cut Steve off here, but
I do. I don't want to hear from Steve again.
Steve's suffering right now. He's in a lot of back pain. He's not.
Oh yeah.
You can't.
I'm sorry, man.
You can't tell by his smile, but he's in pain today.
Have you seen my winches? Every now I'm like, ugh. Or sometimes you'll see me do this.
I just thought you were constipated.
I hurt my sciatic nerve.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah,
that's rough.
Can I just give First, I want to say the sandbagging thing. Do you realize there were a couple guys at the Classic or the last tournament, maybe Santee Cooper, that they were off 8 or 9 pounds off their bass track to what they weighed in. 8 or 9 pounds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I admit I look at bass track. I want to see who's in the hunt, but I don't know why I look at bass track. I mean, it's been around for more than a decade now. And I'm not, my experience with it is not good.
Okay, as an insider,
I can remember, well, I don't mean anything significant by it. My experience with it is very much like most fans. I do remember one tournament on Lake Jordan down in South Alabama, Central Alabama, where according to Bass Track, Todd Faircloth had 2 fish, but they weighed 35 pounds. Todd came in and I said, "Hey man, did you break the state record once or twice?" Yeah, I wish
217
you're not going to do away with it, but I can't think of a good reason why not.
Yeah.
Okay, Ken, as an insider, what are the odds that at the Classic, Christy, we know now Christy was sandbagging there a little bit. What are the odds that was intentionally orchestrated by Bass?
Oh, almost zero.
Okay, I kind of assume that too. But if you think about it from a marketing standpoint, that really adds a lot more excitement on at the weigh-in. If everybody's thinking Kyle's got it, and everybody behind the scenes knows, well, he really doesn't. But we're gonna let this go as long as we can, because it's really going to make the final weigh-in of Christie just that more exciting.
Well, that's an interesting point, Mr. Bass, because Bass is relying totally on the angler to make an estimate of his weight.
Yeah.
And if you're Skeet Reese or Edwin Evers or Jason Christie, you're shooting low. And if you're Mike Iaconelli, you're probably overestimating. And the only guy I ever knew who was consistently within an ounce, maybe 2 ounces of his total weight, it was Aaron Martins. Aaron was always right on the money.
That sounds like his personality.
There was a guy who worked for Bass for a long time in the tournament department. His name was Pee Wee Powers. I hope Pee Wee's doing well in his home in Alabama. But Pee Wee had calibrated eyes. Pee Wee could look in a live well without even taking the bass out of it and come within a couple of ounces of what those fish would weigh. Because he used to run the bump board in the weigh-in line.
Ah.
And he could look at a fish and tell how long it was, tell what it weighed. He had just seen so many bass through the years. And at a big tournament like the Classic, I would call Pee Wee after everybody had come off the water, and I'd say, "Okay, man, who's got it?" And he would tell me every time, and he never missed. He never missed.
That's fascinating.
But Pee Wee retired, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years ago.
Okay, I did way too much research on the topic we were supposed to be talking about. Pages of topics.
He's the research man. I just wing it.
That's because I wanted to know: does it make more sense for somebody to move back? Because, in my opinion, it does. Since 2015, do you know there's only been 3 people from 2015 to 2018 that didn't move on to the MLF that won one of the tournaments?
Yeah, not surprising. I mean, MLF was cherry picking the guys who they thought had the greatest popularity and the greatest following, and they did not invite a lot of the other guys. Now, some guys like Seth Feider got invited and didn't go.
And why did Martin get invited?
What?
You'd have to ask Boyd Duckett and Gary Klein and 40 other anglers, because one of the ways that they selected that group was if you were one of the original guys at MLF, or I think maybe even one of the first 40 guys to fish it, you got to invite a buddy.
Yes.
And so you'd have to ask all those guys why any individual didn't get invited.
Yeah. See, because there's some guys on Major League Fishing that I just don't think they cut it on Major League Fishing. I don't think they'd make it on the elites. And quite honestly, I don't know if they'd make it with the underscore, the Toyota series, to be honest. And they're on Major League Fishing. There's some guys that just have not done well at all on that thing.
Yeah. It's a different game.
Yeah.
It's a very different game than a 5 bass limit. And since there are only a handful of people in the world older than me, I will take you gentlemen back to the late 60s, early to late 70s, and maybe surprise some of your viewers here. But when Bass started, when Ray Scott started having tournaments, basically he started with a 15 fish limit.
Yes.
And there were no live wells.
Sorry.
You just hung them on a chain stringer and dragged them through the water. And then they dropped the creel limit to 10. And it was from about 70. It became 10. And the guys who were excelling were the guys who were really good at catching a lot of fish. But then they decided they wanted live wells. They wanted to release these fish, and that came in 72.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized that it's hard to have a box in your boat that's big enough, well oxygenated enough to support that kind of catch. So they dropped the limit to 7 fish, and that happened in the mid 70s. And they even, for a brief period of time, they even raised the size limit to 14 inches. Whereas now the size limit is pretty much just whatever the body of water says it is.
Yeah.
But for a while, bass wide, it was 14 inches. And each of these changes impacted who was good, who was not good, and the techniques they used in ways that might not be instantly apparent to people. And here, this will probably surprise a lot of folks watching. Bass didn't go to a 5 fish limit for every tournament until 1992. There was a long history. So roughly half of BASS history in tournaments, there was not a 5 fish limit. It was something more than that. There is nothing magical about 5. That's just the nice compromise. It's a compromise of several things. Live well capacity. 5 is basically the smallest creel limit anywhere. It was a creel limit in New York, and they were going to New York sometimes. So they said, rather than confuse people by changing the limit everywhere we go, let's just make it 5. MLF could take a lesson from that, by the way. And that's where it stayed finally, beginning in 92. But there's nothing magical about 5 fish. When the limit dropped from 15 to 10 and then 7, what happened? One thing that happened was flipping became a thing. Suddenly, you didn't care about catching just 10 fish that would keep. You needed to catch 7 fish that had some clout to them. Flipping becomes big. Putting a jig in a tight place and getting a big fish to bite became a thing. Guys who had been great at 10 suddenly couldn't catch big enough fish. Guys like Billy Westmoreland, Roger Moore. These people were stars of the game back then.
Throwing that spinnerbait.
Well, Westmoreland was throwing a lot of finesse stuff. He was a smallmouth king, legend of the lake at Dale Hollow. Yeah, it became better to throw a spinnerbait, something that's going to get a big fish to attack. Roger Moore was a finesse guy from Missouri. But then flipping moves in, and everybody's got a flipping stick as of the late 70s, early 80s. Everybody. And now everybody's probably got 3 in their boat. These shifts in things like size and creel limit impact the game. Just like every fish counts versus 5 fish limit changes the game radically. I don't know. If I were fishing Major League Fishing, I don't know why I wouldn't just have a Ned rig tied on all the time and throw at boat docks or bridge pilings.
It's kind of interesting, the irony that here you go from the old elite days, from 15 down to 5, and the dynamic that it changes from the quality of it. A guy who could shine at 15 doesn't do so well at 5, and vice versa. And we're talking about the exact same thing when it comes to should you be on MLF or BASS, and it really does matter depending upon your strengths.
It's made an enormous impact. In the 70s, there were a lot of guys who were finesse experts, and that was their game. Little plastic worms, deep water. That ended in the late 70s. By the time they dropped it to 7 fish, that just ended. Those guys just disappeared from the trail. And Fish for Life, you're absolutely right. D. Thomas put flip. Well, D. Thomas didn't just put flipping on the board. D. Thomas invented flipping. Came out of a technique called Thule dipping. And D. Thomas won a tournament on Bull Shoals in 1975 that put flipping in the spotlight. And
you know that.
What's that?
I love that you know that.
Well, everybody should know that. We're taught in school.
Yeah, notice he's not looking all this information up, folks. He's just rattling it off the top of his head.
So do you think Major League Fishing is going to continue to make changes to the rules so that they can try to make this? I think they'll try to make things easier, or because the one thing I think Major League Fishing is missing the mark on is the fan interaction that isn't happening at all. And I think at some point that it's going to come back. I think it's biting them in the ass now, but I think slowly but surely, I think we realized with the elites and bass is that there was the unbelievable amount of loyalty that we all had to bass still. But what are your? Do you think that? I guess I could ask Boyd or to come on, but you know how you ask Boyd a question and he runs around a whole circle before he gets you the answer. Do you think they're going to continue to make changes to the format or do something so that they can get more fans involved at some point?
That's obviously Mr. Bass is feeding you questions, Steve, because you're now asking the hard questions. Great question. I like the question, and I wanted to answer it in kind of a flip, obnoxious way, but there are really two answers to that question. My flip, obnoxious answer is Major League Fishing will fine-tune their rules if they're smart. And if they're not smart, they won't, because they need to do what the fans want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
When I watch an organization, and I'm not going to name names, but when I watch an organization try to force feed the fan base something that the fan base is showing them repeatedly it does not care about or does not want, I shake my head in wonder as to what they're doing. I've seen Bass do it. I've seen MLF do it. I've seen NPFL do it. They've all done it at one time or another. I don't get it. Why don't you give the fans what they want? Because you don't exist without the fans. You can't support what you're doing without the fans. Now, that would be my flip answer. They'll change them if they're smart. That's the Ken being a jerk answer. Now, here's the other answer that's possible. Maybe their goal, of course, is to drive Bass out of business or to buy Bass. That's their goal. That's their only game plan. We will drive Bass out of business or we will buy Bass. And if they can do that, they don't have to change anything because they're basically the only game in town. Mm-hmm. And right now, NPFL is not a significant force of anything, of change, or they're not driving anything about the sport at large. So nobody's worried about them right now.
We're not doing anything.
So the choices are: you change and you adapt to what the audience wants, or you die, or you take over the other league and you try to force feed your plan to the audience.
Do you think they're still trying to make an effort to buy Bass though? Because when I talk to, they are. Because Boyd doesn't. Maybe it's Boyd being Boyd then. Maybe I'm.
Well, let me say this. I don't. Are they in active negotiations? I don't know that they are. Last week I had a guy tell me that he wouldn't tell me who it was buying Bass, but he said, "Oh yeah, Bass is on the block. The ink is drying now." But I only hear this rumor about twice a month. I know of a guy who says he wants to buy Bass and he has the wherewithal to do it. Will he do it? I don't know. I know that MLF wants Bass, but only at the right price and only while Bass still has significant value. Mm-hmm. Is Bass for sale? I think Bass would tell all of us, no, we're not for sale. But I also believe that everybody's for sale if the price is right. I could buy Mr. Bass's Cleveland Guardians cap. Did I say that right?
Oh yeah, Guardians.
Jeez. I don't care if Herb Score signed it. I could buy it if I offered the right price. You know, so I tend to think everything's for sale if you're willing to pay the right price. I don't think MLF will overpay for Bass because I think they're too smart for that and they're too business savvy for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I still think, I think when I look 3 years ago and in what happened 3 years from now, we were all shocked and at first were like, can Bass really succeed or even survive? And Bass is still, as much as it's crazy to say, they're still the king for tournament fishermen. I bet you 67.
How can you say that when far more tournaments are held by MLF?
I know. I know. I think what Major League Fishing has done with the BPT is I like that format better. I think there's some tweaks that they could do that would make it a lot better. But I do believe that the anglers on MLF are a better angler. There's better anglers over there. But I mean, it's shocking to say that, we wouldn't have known the Walters or the Johnstons or
I think we would have found those guys, but we would have found those guys through the natural course of opens anglers qualifying for the elites. Patrick Walters is not going to be held down.
No.
That guy is really good.
Really good.
Really good. Jeff Gustafson is really good. Justin Hamner is really good. Lee Livesey can catch them.
Buddy Gross is amazing.
These guys are good. They would have made it, but we're finding out about them sooner because of that.
Yeah.
Ken, I'm wondering, do you know if since Major League Fishing bought FLW, do you know are the those FLW circuits that are below the BPT are they doing better than they did out on their own when it was FLW, or do you have any idea?
I'm really not the guy to ask that one, Mr. Bass. So finally, I'm going to dodge one of your questions.
Okay.
I just don't know. I haven't looked at the
either.
numbers about how many people are signing up. I would expect they're doing pretty well. From a standpoint of, I bet they're getting plenty of people to sign up. I think they still know how to excite the crowd. They still have a 5-fish format that a lot of people like.
Yeah.
So many guys who fish those level events are fishing them based on whether or not they like the schedule.
Yeah.
So as long as they're coming up with an attractive schedule over there, they're going to get some significant draws in that world. And if they're not, then they're going to struggle. I know, and we all know, all three of us know a lot of guys who will decide where they're fishing based on what the schedule looks like.
Yeah. I mean, like Cox. I mean, he fished everything last year. Now he's only fishing that under series, the Toyota series, and then he's fishing the elites, which was to be honest, that was a really big surprise for me. I didn't think he was going to fish the elites this year, but I think he looked at the schedule and went, I think the schedule for the elites makes a lot of sense for me.
I love John Cox. John Cox is awesome.
And we're seeing it this year.
I want to first say John Cox is awesome. He's one of my favorite guys out there. He's always got a smile on his face. He's a lot of fun. He's a hell of a fisherman. And, I love when you go to the Classic and there he is competing, and then you go 2 weeks later to Red Crest and there he is competing again. That's something that ain't going to happen very often.
Sure.
That is an accomplishment. So kudos to John Cox, who is a cool guy.
He's first place AOI on the elites.
Amazing. Just an amazing, natural, gifted, no pretense about this guy angler.
You figure he's fishing the elites and Major League Fishing. He's fished 4 tournaments on the elites. He came in 4th place, 7th place, 7th place, and his worst finish, 36th. It's insane. He has no practice time practically. I mean, he's so busy.
That's a spectacular performance.
It's incredible.
That's a spectacular performance. I'm a big John Cox fan. He's just a fun guy and a super talent, and fishing out of an aluminum boat, and so I want to see that guy succeed.
Yeah, I agree. He's one of the best. So if you were one of the Major League Fishing guys came up to you and said, "Should I go back to the elites?" What would your comment be to them if they had an automatic way to get back? Let's say
I've actually had guys ask me that question.
Let's just say Kevin Van Dam comes up to you and says, "I want your opinion, cousin Ken."
I say, Kevin, stop bothering me with all your career questions. Kevin doesn't ask me career questions.
No, I'm using it as an example.
But I have had some guys ask me that question. Not Kevin. Kevin has his own plan. I would say there are several factors that should be considered. And I think the two biggest are, what does your game suit best? What does your personal angling style suit best? Are you a grinder who's going to be able to put 5 in the boat and that's your game? You're a pitcher, you're a flipper, you're to borrow an MLF phrase, a heavy hitter? Or are you better suited for a finesse approach, an every fish counts approach? I think that should be first and foremost. But your second consideration should be the platform. Which platform is going to better serve your sponsors? If your sponsors are Pure Fishing, then, and maybe Bass Pro Shops, then I would say MLF is for you. If your sponsors are a lot of smaller brands, then I would say you need to be fishing Bass. Bass has very strong media platforms relative to MLF right now. Stronger magazine platform, stronger web platform, but maybe not a stronger TV platform. What do your sponsors want? Talk to your sponsors. Any angler who makes a decision like that without talking to his key sponsors is foolish, is rolling the dice that he's going to piss off the wrong people. I think you got to figure out where your game is, and you got to figure out what's best for your sponsors.
Yeah, I think there's some guys that just like you and I. We've said it earlier. Palaniuk, it made to me, God's honest truth.
Palaniuk has never been a numbers guy.
Yeah, but I didn't see why Palaniuk, Lucas, especially Justin Lucas and Jordan Lee left, especially after Jordan Lee won the 2 classics back to back.
And Lucas had just won the AOI.
Yeah. Lucas won 2018 AOI, and he's stepping away from the platform that's going to make him the biggest thing in the sport for 12 months.
Yeah.
Or 6 months anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I saw Ish Monroe at Harris Chain. Maybe it was an open or something.
By the way, 2 MLF guys showed up and worked booths at the Classic.
Did they really?
No elite angler worked a booth at the Red Crest.
Of course. Nobody. Yeah. I mean,
come on, guys, work for your sponsors.
Yeah,
they're paying the bills.
At some point in time, that's going to have to break. You know that. Someone's going to have to make the shift and go, look, they have to do that, because there are anglers there are fans.
2 guys did. 2 guys did.
Who were they?
Ish Monroe and Cody Meyer.
Okay.
Both came to work the Daiwa booth.
Okay.
And Daiwa did not ask either of those guys to do it.
Oh,
those guys just volunteered to do it.
So getting back to Ish, I saw it. I don't know. I don't want to say it's the Harris Chain or Toho. I don't know where it was that Ish and I sat down for a few minutes, but it was the summer of Major League Fishing Bass, that breakup. And the first question I asked him, I said, why are you moving to Major League Fishing? What makes it? And his exact words were, it's a money thing. Do you think do you think the anglers are making more money on MLF versus Bass Pro, or do you think it's pretty comparable on both sides? The
MLF top versus BASS?
Yeah, the top anglers.
Oh, I don't know. There was a time in 2019 where I thought the only guy who was better off a year after the split was Edwin Evers, because Edwin Evers had dominated MLF.
Yeah,
just dominated. He won Angler of the Year. He won the points title. He won the Red Crest. He just killed it. And I love Edwin, so I was happy for him. But there was a part of me that thought, this is the only guy who's really benefited from all this. But now it's hard to say. I talked to guys on both sides, and some of the MLF guys are telling me, hey, I'm getting more exposure than ever before. My sponsors are loving this. This has been really good for me. And on the other hand, you've got some guys leaving. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think it's a case-by-case deal.
Yeah, I think there's some guys, Edwin the first year, I think you look at like Jacob Wheeler and Ott. Ott's been on fire lately. And there's some of those guys that have just really done well. Even, to be honest, Van Dam hasn't really done that bad in Major League Fishing. I think he's won once every year or something like that.
Van Dam seems to be adjusting his game.
Yeah.
Van Dam's always been a numbers guy. Van Dam has always fished for groups of fish. And Mr. Bass, I saw the question you just popped up there about how do you know if you're good at one format versus the other. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of guesswork, but I think every one of us can look at our angling style and probably get an idea. First of all, I suck. I don't catch many fish. So the last thing I need to do is be fishing Bass Pro Tour.
I agree.
You agree that I suck. But some guys are good at finding concentrations of fish and catching fish after fish after fish. And they're naturally going to be better at that other format. Some guys who, if you make a living if your tournament game involves you having a flipping stick in your hand, you want 5 fish limit. If your tournament game is more finesse, if your tournament game is more horizontal baits, jerk baits, swim baits, crank baits, then maybe you can do well in the numbers game. But every one of these guys, if he would do a little self-analysis, probably knows which one's better for him. But that doesn't mean they always make the right decision. That doesn't mean they always use that information to formulate their decision. They're often going because, well, my buddies are all over here, or, well, this seems like the thing to do, or, well, I think I can make some more money over here, or, well, I don't trust bass anymore. So
it does make you wonder what people are thinking, though. Like, I mean, somebody mentions Ish here. Ish did way better on the elites, and after 3 or 4, coming up on 5 years, it makes you wonder what some of these guys that left the elites, that just their style doesn't seem to fit Major League Fishing, that they're not just. It's got to be going through their head, they got to be.
That's what I think too. I think there's certain guys that just have got to be going, man, this was not that it's not what they thought, but they just are going, I don't fish that well. I think
it's not a question of that. Well, I mean, you could be a superstar in the 5 fish limit thing and be what we would all agree is a fantastic angler, but then go over here to this other thing and suck.
I saw Jason Christie and interviewed him at Okeechobee in the second year, and I had to run from Okeechobee all the way to the coast to go interview them at a Bass Pro Shops. And he had just gotten done doing his Monster Bass subscription box, or putting everything in it, or it was all collab by him, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him, does this format fit you? And he told me yes. And I thought to myself, it doesn't fit him. He's better at fishing than anybody.
You show me a guy who's going to give you a different answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we give, when we have, there's a lot of guys that we ask the question, they tell us what you want to hear. But then there's other guys that really are honest with you. I mean, I said it to Hunter Shryock, and Hunter's like, look, I love bass, but I think I'm better at this kind of fishing than catching 5.
Fletcher or Hunter?
So Fletcher. So because he's on Major League Fishing.
Yes.
And I remember him sitting in the car telling me that with his girlfriend at the time. And
I think maybe that's been established.
Yeah. And there are certain guys that just do better catching a slew of fish.
Look at Jeff Sprague. Sprague didn't have was not a massive star with the 5 fish limit era in the FLW series. He's become much more prominent, much more popular. MLF and the Every Fish Counts format has been really good for him.
Look at Andy Montgomery. Another guy that's a great angler and does fairly well on MLF, I think.
Also wildly funny for anybody who's
wildly funny. That guy has the sharpest sense of humor of all,
and so self-deprecating, just a great guy.
Yeah.
Hey, can I address a comment that Tim Maynard made. Tim, a while back, you said, remember when Hank Parker won the 79 Classic with Gary Klein's flip and stick and didn't even know how to flip, or at least thought he didn't. I may set that a little bit straight, because I've had the great fortune of talking with Hank about that many times, talking about Gary with that many times. And this January, I had the chance to talk to him in the same room at the same time about it. That was a blast because, a lot of people don't know. Hank Parker won the 1979 Classic on Lake Texoma, which is on the Texas-Oklahoma border. And he won it flipping. He won it flipping man's plastic worms in the backs of creeks, back of one creek in particular. And he came to the tournament. He didn't have a flipping stick. And the reason he didn't have a flipping stick, Tim, is because this was back in the day when you fished out of boats that BASS provided for the Classic, Ranger Classic Edition boats. And so Hank and all these other guys, they didn't drive out there pulling a boat. They flew out there. And Hank didn't have a rod tube big enough to hold his flipping sticks. So he went out there with no 7.5 foot rods. He went out there with a bunch of, 6 and 7 foot rods. And the longest rod he had was a cranking rod. And he gets there and he discovers pretty quickly that flipping is going to be the deal for him. And but he's doing it with a crankbait rod. And you can imagine how horrible that would be, because that's going to be way too soft.
In fact, that had to be an all glass rod back then.
It maybe not. There were certainly graphite rods then. I mean, graphite had already become very popular and was already the thing, but it could have been an all glass rod, certainly, because, we still have all glass cranking rods. But what he had was inadequate to the task. And so he goes to his buddy Gary and he borrows a flipping stick and he wins the tournament. I think Gary finished third or fourth that year. And I've always teased Gary about it. Would he still do it if he knew Hank was going to go out and win? He said, "Oh yeah, I'd absolutely do it." And when I asked him separately, I asked Hank, I said, "Did you give him the flipping stick back?" And Hank said, "Oh yeah, I did. I gave him the flipping stick back." And Gary would say, "No, he did not. Never saw that flipping stick again." And this was in 1979. Gary Klein was a 21-year-old rookie. And the only rods he carried were flipping sticks. He did not carry anything other than a 7'6" Fenwick flipping stick with him. And but I find when they were in the same room, finally I got Gary to admit that, I guess I probably did get the stick back. I have no idea where it is now. So I couldn't get him to give it to me. Wouldn't that be cool to have Gary Klein's flipping stick that Hank Parker used to win the Classic?
That's funny.
Would be outrageous.
That's funny because now I don't even think of Gary Klein as a flipper at all.
I don't either.
He's
got such a huge reputation with finesse nowadays.
Yeah, he really does.
But Gary was an early protege of D. Thomas, the man who invented flipping. And when Gary left Oroville, California to come east and fish the BASS tour, that was really all he knew. Before he met D. Thomas, and he met D when he was 14 or 15 years old. And before he met D, he only fished with a spinning rod. He didn't know how to use a bait caster. And his summer job was at a marina on Lake Oroville. And suddenly one day there's a tournament out of the marina, and he had never seen bass fishing competition, didn't know anything about it. It was a $25 entry fee. And he thought that was the greatest thing in the world. D. Thomas won that tournament. And Gary, who was a brash high school kid, walked up to him and said, "Mr. Thomas, my name is Gary Klein, and I'm going to be better than you one day." And D said to him, "Bring it on, kid."
Nice.
And D had 3 daughters, but no sons. And Gary became the son that D. Thomas never had. And D taught Gary everything, and just a cool, it's not just fishing, obviously, where things happen and cool things evolve, deliver, or evolve and change and transpire. But every walk of life is like that. But I love that story.
I have never asked you this, and I
Briefs.
do you have one story that you do you have one story that sticks out in your mind that you love to share and tell people? It's almost like I don't even know if I've ever said it on here. My my iCast whatever story with the Indiana coach. I forgot his name.
Bobby Knight.
But do you have a story that you've heard from people that you just love to tell people?
I've heard from people, or that I experienced?
That you either heard or experienced.
Yeah, it was 2015. A buddy of mine calls me up one day and says, "I'm going to be in Casey Ashley's boat for the Bass Bash."
Yeah, including that one.
Oh. No, I'm not going to do that one to you. You just lobbed that one up to me, Steve. You just said, "Here, hit me, punch me."
Like my back isn't hurting enough. You're going to drop that bomb. I think we told that one last time too.
I think we did, but how can I resist when you just lob it up there and beg me to hit you?
I've blessed you.
No, you know what? It's nice that you asked me that, but there are so many. There's so many. I was in a boat with a young elite pro named Justin Hamner, who's really talented fisherman, super duper talented fisherman. And he had seen me on some podcasts talking about pros and fishing history and stuff like that. And all he wanted to do was listen to me tell Aaron Martin stories, because Aaron had been his hero coming up. And so for a couple hours, we just talked, and he never met Aaron. He never got to meet Aaron. But all he wanted to do was hear about Aaron. And I thought that was
cool. Want to, because I love telling my Aaron stories. But do you have an Aaron story that that just stands out to remember just how amazing he was, also how kind of crazy he was at the same time? And I say that politely. I didn't mean
I don't have one, Steve. I have about 800. But I will tell you one of my favorites. This is one of my 2 or 3 favorites, because I think it combines the fishing genius with just how different he was and offbeat. 2004 Classic was the second Classic that Aaron finished second in. You know, he had the reputation for finishing, or he finished second in the Classic 4 times. In 2004, he did it for the second time, and he lost to Takahiro by a little bit. And that one was on Lake Wiley in North Carolina. And Aaron caught a lot of his fish, throwing a fish head spin style bait to bridge pilings, and just caught a lot of fish on it. And tournament's over, and he's come up a little bit short, and we're at his boat, and his boat is just littered with fluke style baits, just littered with pearl fluke style baits. And I'm just mindlessly picking them up while we're talking. And I noticed they're all the same, they're all pearl, but he's taken a marker and marked each one of them up the same way. And if you've ever tried to mark up a soft plastisol bait like that, you know that you can't do it the night before. If you do it the night before, it will just ooze and bleed onto itself, and it'll be like you never did anything. It'll just be a smudge in a few hours later. But he was doing this immediately before he cast the bait out. This had to be done, less than a minute before he cast the bait out is when he's making these marks. And each one of these baits had a black eye on each side. And each of these baits had a red gill plate. And each of these baits had a smiley face. I said, Aaron, and this is a tournament. Every cast matters. Every cast could be the one that puts you over the top, that changes you in terms of the way history of the sport looks at you. I said, Aaron, I held up the bait. I said, I get the eyes. I get that. I get the gill plate. What's with a smiley face? And Aaron said, Ken, I felt like they wanted a happy bait. And he was absolutely serious. And I miss that guy to this day.
I mean, I don't even think I don't think we can realize just how amazing Aaron was in so many ways. I mean, people don't know this. Ken started a thing at Lake X here in Orlando called iCast on the Water. It was
no, it was not iCast on the Water. It had nothing to do with iCast. We called that Tackle X.
It was called what?
Tackle X.
Tackle X. It was Ken's complete idea. All these vendors come out, and it allowed the media to come out and try all the lures, baits, rods, reels before iCast. Because once you get to iCast, you can't really try anything. You can pick them up and look at them and do whatever. But this gave us, the media and other people, an opportunity to go out and really put hands on and see how it was. It was a brilliant idea. And I think we had it was a tournament the first year, wasn't it?
No, we didn't have a tournament. As a matter of fact, Steve, because Lake X was such an iconic venue and stuff, I had to do all I could to keep people from just trying to go out there and fish.
Yeah, I went out and fished with Shaw's grandson.
You and Bryce were my nemesis. No, I'm kidding. No,
yeah.
There were guys. But I know a little bit about where you're going. I know Aaron came out a day early.
Yes,
and to fish some with me, and I also set up kind of a play date with a friend of mine named Patrick Pierce. But go ahead, Steve.
But Ken had set up like a dinner for us, like a barbecue. It was barbecue steak, and I brought out, and I said, well, what can I bring out? He's like, don't worry about bringing. I brought out bruschetta for a ton of people. Everybody loved it. It went over because we got rained out. But I remember Aaron didn't have anybody to sit with. And I said to Aaron, dude, if you don't mind, I have a couple questions about how you looked at this lake. He proceeded to sit down in front of me, and for 2 hours, remember how bad that storm was? For 2 hours, he talked about how I was dissecting the way I was fishing in Florida completely wrong. Everything I asked and said, I said, well, should I do this? He said, forget that. You're doing it wrong. And I was like, really? I'm fishing that bad? He's like, you're fishing like a saltwater angler, and you're not a saltwater angler anymore. You're a bass angler. You need to do this, and you need to do that. And I went, and my mind was like, and I just kept going. I kept asking question after question. And I remember thinking after 2 hours, this man hates me because I have completely ruined his night. And like two years later, I saw him at the Classic, and he needed help putting his boat cover over. And he said to me, his exact words were, I've never met somebody who was more excited about learning than you. And I was like, oh God, I love this dude more than life itself.
How could you? Yeah, Mr. Bass, did you ever have a chance to meet Aaron?
Well, I only had one encounter with him. Actually, it was at Lake St. Clair, and he was. I was fishing an open there as a co-angler, and he was fishing on the pro side for fun. And I was just practicing, and he was late for something, and he was coming off the water late.
Heaven forbid, he was late for everything.
Yeah, I know. He had a reputation. He literally kind of banks his boat up on the bank and leaps off of it and just dead run. And I'm like, Aaron, how's it going, man? And I wanted to say hi to him, and he waved, and he was like, I don't have time. I'm late. I got to be, And I was like, you're leaving your boat. I mean, are you coming back? I'll come back later. And he runs to his truck, and then he turns around and runs back to the boat. I forgot my keys. And, it was just hilarious to watch him go, and just totally frantic. But that's really the only encounter I had with him.
You may have the strangest only encounter of anybody I know with Aaron Martins. That's bizarre.
Because he was really good about talking to everybody. He always had, even though, like, I'd say this jokingly, I remember talking to him, a bird flying over, and him knowing what kind of bird it was, and then knowing the sound the bird made, and why it was flying this way, And I'm like, we're talking fishing here. Don't worry about the bird, man. But he was, if he was tunnel focused, he was focused. But when he wasn't tunnel focused, he was all over.
He could be all over. Just a great human being. One of the greatest fishermen I've ever known, and a better person.
Yeah,
he's one of those guys that kind of he had this second dimension, a lot like Rick Clunn, where he just thought so deeply about fishing and about everything about it.
Yeah, Rick Clunn is just other level intense, and one of my favorite people in the sport is Rick Clunn. I admire Rick so much. I'm so proud to be a friend of Rick Clunn. Rick was on the cover of the first Bassmaster magazine I ever saw as a kid, and now all we talk about is poker.
Yeah, he loves poker.
Does he?
He's good too. He there was a Midwest poker tour or something like that, and he bubbled the final table once, and he's serious about his poker. That was one of the cool things about the tournament trail, and when I was covering the tournaments back in the day, is if there was a bad weather day and there was not going to be any fishing, then there would be a group of us who would go to the closest casino and play poker. And just all I can say is watch out for Todd Faircloth.
Well, I mean, what about Kyle Welcher?
Okay, Welcher story. I like Kyle Welcher. That is a smart young man. He's an amazing fisherman. He's off to a terrible start.
A terrible start. He was good. They were good start last year, though.
But he's a great fisherman. And, anyway, so I'm at a media junket on the Mississippi River out of Iowa, I think last year. Yeah, Iowa. And Kyle Welcher's on it, and it's the Gamakatsu folks, and the Denali Rods folks, and the AFCO folks with their pro staffs and all. And this was last summer. We were going to have a poker tournament with all the proceeds going to Aaron, because Aaron was also part of that Gamakatsu pro staff and all that, and he was usually at that event, but he couldn't be for health reasons. So we're there, and Welcher's playing. There's about 20 of us going to play, and everybody's talking about, we got Welcher here. He's the man to beat. He was the first guy knocked out.
Was he really?
He was.
What do you know? Well, I mean, that's just the way you
bad beat or something.
Well, you know what it is. It's a lot easier to beat. It's a lot easier to do well at a table full of good players than it is to beat a table full of people who have no idea what they're doing.
You're playing luck.
Because they're saying, "Oh, 2-7 off. That looks good."
Yeah.
And then they river a straight or something.
Yeah, that's the Larry the Cable Guy poker. Everybody buys in for $40, and he goes all in on the first hand every hand. Because $40 to Dan. Nothing. Every hand, it's all in, and you're like, I can't play like this. I don't want to play like this. And he's like, I'm going all in every hand. I don't care if I lose $10,000 to you guys tonight. And then he ends up killing all of us because it's pure luck.
In this case, it was a bunch of people who really enjoy playing, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and shout out to my friends from Gamakatsu, especially Jeff Roberts, who kept the bourbons coming my way to excess. Actually,
too many of those.
I love Jeff Roberts, great guy, but don't let him be in charge of your bourbon consumption.
Good to know. Good to know. All right, Ken, totally off the wall question, totally just out there, totally random. What do you think of the new Yamamoto logo?
There's a new Yamamoto logo?
Can you show me, Mr. Bass? Because I haven't seen it.
I don't like it. Yeah, I can show you. The Gary Yamamoto baits have totally changed their
You're way ahead of me, Mr. Bass. I have not seen that. Okay, I will be curious to see what it looks like.
Pull it up for you, and I'll share the screen and show you guys.
The guy who is now in charge of that brand is Crispin Powley, who worked for a long time with Strike King. He's a very smart guy. I think he's going to do some big things with Yamamoto. I think it makes a lot of sense to change the logo. I do, because
I like the one with the bass on the right.
You like it?
I do.
Okay, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
Can't
But
see it.
I'm going to pull it up here and show it to you.
But Crispin Powley is the right guy for that job. So what is so the logo is the word sync? Well, no, I'm sorry.
Up there at the top, Yamamoto.
Okay, I gotcha. I like it.
That's it. I mean, I guess, I don't know if it was part of the deal that he had to remove Gary's name. First and foremost, it kind of bugs me. I know, it was sale, so.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess I'm just so old school Gary Yamamoto that I don't know. This just does something to me. I can't even describe it, but it seems like a real shame to me.
Yeah, I think you want to know what you got to remember that as someone who does graphics, you want to kind of keep things as simple as possible. I remember hearing Luke Duncan do a whole thing, a rant about how Major League Fishing's logo was wrong because it didn't have a bass in it. And I thought to myself, are you joking? You want to keep things as simple as possible, yet clean is really, you got to remember, people are trying to embroider this, and they're trying to use logos and stuff like that. And that logo is just really clean and simple. Mm-hmm. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, a perfect example is look at all the Yahoos and the Googles and all those people that make logos, and they spend all their money on rebranding the thing. They're not going out and putting a whole bunch of colors and stuff into it. It's clean, it's simple, and that's the way you have to kind of go with it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I think just looking at it, if it were like a new company or something, I would have no problem with it. It's just deep down in my soul.
Yeah, I know.
Gary Yamamoto. I mean, it just looks nothing like it. It's just so different. I don't know. It just doesn't make me feel very good. But as long as they don't change the baits, I'm cool. I'm cool with it.
I'm sure they won't change the baits. I mean, that would be moronic.
Really dumb. Yeah.
Well, we're also talking about the brand that has the finest URL in the fishing world.
Yeah, baits.com.
Baits.com. That ain't bad.
Right. That's right.
Bad.
They've still got that. Baits.com for sure.
I don't even want to know how much that URL probably is worth, to be honest. I know a buddy that bought a whole bunch of URLs years and years ago, and he bought used golf, and he also bought PGAtour.com, and he got paid $7 million for PGAtour.com.
Wow.
He bought
I hate that story because I hate hearing about website domain name sitters who got rich.
Yeah.
I think they should all be taken out and beaten.
That was, oh my gosh.
And then we can start a dirtbagbeaten.com site where nothing but videos of those guys getting the crap beaten out of them.
They can't do that now, because if you can show that you own it, but this was before all that. I mean, I know people that bought some domain names that they have not done anything in 25 years.
I bought a domain name 7 or 8 years ago that I've not done anything with, but I might one day. And I love my domain name. I can't say it. I'm only drinking water.
Yeah.
But I have mycropterus.com, which is the Latin genus of the bass family.
That's the name of the boat too.
That's the name of the boat too. Mycropterus maximus is the name of the boat. And anybody wants my email address, I talked about giving it out earlier. If you want my email address, I am ken@mycropterus.com. Love to hear from you.
Can we talk about where you were the last few days?
Sure.
Because I think people might enjoy why or how, since I don't get to go to these and Mr. Bass doesn't get to go to these junkets either. Tell everybody where you were and who you were with.
Okay. I was on a media junket, which is manufacturers will have new products coming out or something like that, and they want to introduce those new products to the media and hopefully get some exposure for those products. And in this case, it was one put on by American Baitworks, and those are American Baitworks is the umbrella company for scum frog, snag proof, freedom tackle, halo rods, net bait. I'm sure I'm missing some, but you get the idea. And this one was at one of my absolute favorite places to go for a media trip or just to go anytime, which is Gros Savon, a fabulous resort lodge in the Lake Charles, Louisiana area. It's about 25 minutes from the Lake Charles airport, and it is beyond wonderful. The fishing there is outrageously good, and the food is even better. They have a chef there. His name is Matt, who has cooked. I've been there a couple of times with other companies, and while there, I've eaten the two finest steaks I've ever had in my life. This guy is such a great chef. But the fishing is good. You're fishing flooded rice fields. They have a couple thousand acres of bass water, and we were fishing just 2 days on this particular trip, but I think I caught probably 150 bass and up to maybe 7 pounds. And I had a day on Tuesday where I caught about 50 bass on a hollow body frog. And it's just an amazing place to go because I don't consider myself a great hollow body frog fisherman, but I sure felt like a great hollow body frog fisherman that day.
Your Bobby's Perfect or the Fat Frog?
I was throwing the Bobby's Perfect, but that was just what I was in Lee Livesey's boat for most of those catches. And Lee Livesey has won an elite tournament, fishing frogs. So it's interesting to be in the boat with the frog master. And I've also had a chance to fish a frog with Dean Rojas and Ish Monroe. So I've gotten lessons from the best. And, but sometimes you're getting a lesson and it's not frog time, or you're not on a great body of water, or you're not on a private body of water where they're really stupid fish. So this was putting it all together. I had the expert, I had the body of water, the fish are not bright, and the weather was great for that, and just had a wonderful time.
Now, sorry, Mr. Bastiat, what did Lee tell you? What did he say? What was his technique? Because he won on he won Santee Cooper, didn't he? Or whatever tournament it was last year, frog fishing.
He won one on topwater baits on like spooks and stuff.
He fished Chickamauga. He won Chickamauga with a frog in the grass.
Yeah, and then he won fork with a spook, I think. Yeah. Well, the main thing I learned from Lee is I learned a lot about patterning from Lee, patterning these fish on a frog. Believe it or not, we could not get a bite around pads. They were on nothing reed banks. And maybe because the pads had gotten a lot of pressure, maybe some other reason, but we were just catching them on nothing looking reed banks. And whereas Dean Rojas has always told me, you got to wait about 2 seconds before setting the hook, Livesey was setting the hook as soon as he had the strike. I mean, boom. And these fish were choking on the bait. They were taking it so deep. So obviously it varies depending on how they're taking the bait and so forth. But these fish had it way down, way down. I was unhooking the biggest fish I caught in Lee's boat, and I had to push the frog to get the hook backed out, and it started to go down the throat almost. It was so deep. Yeah, the gullet, and it was shocking how deep they were taking that frog. But he's setting the hook a lot quicker than anybody I've ever seen, and he's got phenomenal reflexes and just a real talent. Had a good time. I caught quite a few frog fish with Justin Hamner, who's another very talented frog fisherman. But hey, if you have a chance to go to Gros Savon in that Lake Charles area and you don't go, please send me in your place. I will go. I will not pass up that opportunity. A former elite angler, Dennis TJ, great friend of mine, a wonderful guy. He runs the hospitality for them and runs the guide service out at Gros Savon. And as Dennis likes to put it, he's got a great line. He said he left the elite series for the elite life.
No kidding.
Oh, man, that's cool.
He fished 79 half-day trips with clients last year, and he keeps track of each fish that comes in his boat. They caught over 9,000 fish.
Holy crap.
The average trip was 118, I think.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Those are half
crazy.
days, huh?
It's that good. It's that good at Gros Savon. And then you come in at the end of the day and you eat just the finest food you'd ever want to try.
Wow. Way to really depress us.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the cool part, you're asking about that kind of experience to go on a media junket like that, is the pros who are there are guys like Justin Hamner, Lee Livesey, Scott Canterbury, Greg Vinson, Cliff Crochet. Wonderful guys. A lot of fun out there. Just a really, really good time. And some of those guys I knew pretty well. Some of those guys I didn't really know at all until I got there. And just a really good trip. Jeremy Lawyer was there. Another guy I really admire.
Yeah. I got invited. I don't think I'm going to be able to go. I got invited to go to the Everglades on Sunday through Thursday to fish at they want to film everything, a house. I just don't think my back's going to let me. So
that's a shame, man. I hate to hear that.
Yeah. And let me just say it correctly, because since I said it wrong in my video consistently, Chickamauga. Sorry.
Chickamauga.
I say Chickamauga or whatever the hell I say. I don't even know how I say it now.
Just say chick.
Yeah, that's what I from now on, it's chick from here on out. Because it's like saying it wrong is like the worst to all these people.
Yeah.
Here's what you say. Here, this is easy to pronounce. Follow along with me. See if you can say it just like I say it.
Yeah.
The most overrated tournament lake in the country.
You want to know
how you pronounce it? Chickamauga is a Native American word meaning the most overrated tournament lake in the country.
That's perfect.
Fishing reports for Chick, like you see someone catching a 10-pounder every day on the fishing reports, but then when they have a tournament, everyone seems to suck it up.
Yeah, interesting. Man, Ken, this is
wildly overrated.
This has been a blast, Ken. I've loved having you on. We're already almost at 2 hours. It's just
we got to wrap it up. My back is killing me. That's why I've been going.
Guys, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I always enjoy the conversation, and it's a lot of fun, and I love the interaction you get from your fans. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer all the questions. Somebody asked what kind of boat I have. I've got a 16-foot Alumacraft with stick steering because I'm an old guy with a bad balance. So
and it doesn't turn right well.
Stuff. What's that?
It doesn't turn right well.
It doesn't turn. It has its challenges with left actually.
Left
at speed. Okay.
We lean into it.
Well, I don't know how many people on here can even fathom what a treat it is to have you on, because, man, the information you have, Ken, is just phenomenal. So thanks so much for joining us.
I made it all up, Mr. Bass. I hope you don't mind. Just
I don't care at all, man. It's incredible. It's, hey, we got to have you back. We definitely want to have you back. And thanks so much for joining us. Steve, you got any final thoughts?
Did you hear me?
No.
I said, I love you, man.
Love you, brother. You guys are awesome. Thanks again so much for having me on. It's always a treat. I know Steve reached out about a show earlier, and in fact, I was at Gros Savon, and that's kind of the middle of nowhere, so I missed that, but anytime.
Thank you, dude.
Right on. Steve, close us out, man.
Take a kid fishing. Get your fish on. Oh, my back.
Happy fishing. Bye.